In 2006, after the revised rules, you decided not to participate in that auction because you felt that it would be really difficult for you to raise the money. When I asked the chairman the same question about how the revised rules will have unintended consequences for small entities, his answer was that out of 101 or 57 competed, beat it, and they won. Are you aware of, but then I asked him, out of the 57, how many were new entrants? I believe he didn't answer. Are you aware of how many of the 57 were new entrants?
Chairwoman, I don't know the exact number, but I can tell you of the DEs that won licenses, I think a few things are important. One, they won 20% of the licenses. So if he's, taking the best number, maybe our 4% of the revenue is the worst number, and there's some numbers in between. And one is that 20% of the licenses in that auction went to DEs. 70% of those went to rural telephone companies that claimed in their application. So the remaining 30% went to new entrants. However, of that, I believe there were a handful. Many companies that we had competed against in prior auctions, like myself, did not come to that auction.
Ms. Bond, do you have any recommendations about how the Commission's rule could be refined to provide flexibility to pursue proven business models without undermining the safeguards against abuse? Ms. Spencer.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you said Mr. Rudd.
Sorry,
okay.
Ms.
Well, I think the fraud issue was what the Commission was concerned about, and we're concerned about that too. But I think the rule changes actually didn't go to the Gabelli situation. With Gabelli, it was a question of, was the small business he was investing in a legitimate small business? There are ways to address that. The construction requirements are one way. You have to have a service. But what the Commission did is look and say, well, we're not going to let you lease. We're not going to let you wholesale. Gabelli wasn't doing any of that. So it's kind of like we had the problem and we applied a Band-Aid somewhere else. So I think there are a lot of rules. The Commission gets applications. They can review applications. Challenges can be brought, and people do that. Other bidders bring that. But the construction requirements here are very severe, as been pointed out. So there are ways to make sure people use the spectrum. But the answer of doing these other kind of line of business restrictions and the 10-year hold, you cannot talk to a venture capitalist, you can't talk to Wall Street and say, lend me money, because they get into the details of what you can and cannot do, and they don't see how you can navigate in a competitive market.
Well, how would you react to the answer provided by the chairman that, the fact that 57 small entities were able to get the licenses compared to the 101?
Well, I congratulate them.
Apparently they didn't have problem raising the money.
Well, I think rural telephone companies have, and Mr. Bond can address this more, they have a base. So what they are doing is they're buying spectrum to add on to their business. A new entrant has nothing. We're starting from zero. So I think that's part of it. And frankly, the rule changes were late. So I think some people may have had their money and it wasn't affected.
Thank you. Mr. Bond, can you tell me if, and the committee, if any of the associations that your company is a part of have brought legal actions against the FCC regarding the regulatory flexibility analysis?
I'm aware, I was told of one as we were listening to the chairman's testimony, and I understand that during the local number portability proceedings that we did bring, and rules were stayed as they applied to local telephone companies. So that is one that I'm aware of.
My concern is if there is concerns out there regarding the fact that the FCC didn't conduct a responsible analysis regarding the Regulatory Flexibility Act, I didn't see the complaints and comments submitted to FCC. I don't see a big number.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Mr. Libertelli, Skype, along with Google and other Internet companies, have been strong supporters of the open platform requirement. which will allow individuals to use any device for the 700 megahertz frequencies. Looking forward, what will the wireless market look like after the auction, and why are the open platform rules important to you and your customers?
Chairwoman Velázquez, I think there are two dimensions to the answer to your question. The first is we think that after the 700 megahertz auction is completed and these open device and application principles are put into the market, you'll see consumers take greater control over the way they use communication services in wireless. So in the story I mentioned in my testimony, you'll see small businesses take control over the amount of overage they typically have with a wireless service and try to reduce the cost of doing business. The other dimension to this, which I think is critically important, is that if the 700 megahertz rules are put in place and openness principles prevail, you'll start to see more and more small, and I mean very small companies, 0 to 10 people, build mobile applications that plug into applications like Skype. We try to approach this with some amount of humility. We can't always figure out what the next great internet application will be, but we can partner with companies who are themselves small businesses to develop that application and jointly provide that choice to consumers. So we'd expect to see more consumer empowerment on the service side and more innovation on the development side.
Thank you. Mr. Bond, I share your concerns regarding the Regulatory Flexibility Act, and I just want to, for you and other associations that really represent small businesses, to understand that the Regulatory Flexibility Act is an important tool of this committee, is under the jurisdiction of the Small Business Committee. So when a federal agency is going to issue a regulation or rule, they have to comply to do the proper economic impact on small businesses, and that we can use to bring the agency before this committee. And so in helping us do our job, it is important for trade associations that represent small businesses to submit the comments and to raise the concerns in big numbers, so that will give us the arguments to bring those agencies before the committee.
Yes, ma'am, and we do make it a practice to comment. I thought the question was more tailored towards legal action, and it is very expensive to challenge legally. Small businesses don't have the resources to go down that path, and the associations being funded by small businesses are limited in resources as well. But we do make it a practice to comment.
From your testimony, it sounds as though rural communication companies have a great deal of uncertainty about how the upcoming auction will impact their businesses.
Yes,
do you expect that your small business customers will benefit from the open platform requirements that the FCC assigned to the C-Block licenses?
Absolutely. Small business customers, and I will speak as both a rural telephone company, rural carrier, and small business customer myself, need access to the same to the high-end equipment. I mean, speaking as a carrier, wireless carrier, one of the hard tasks that we had was to get equipment to sell to our customers. We're on the tail end of the supply chain. All of the new equipment, the stuff that's advertised, the stuff that's promoted, is tailored for and sold by the large carriers. And in most cases, we can't get that equipment until it's generations old.
Thank you.